today the big story is that finally the Google is being sued by the DOJ in an antitrust case over search dominance. Now, here's the thing. I've always hated their narrative that they're censoring conservatives. Motherfuckers, this ain't new. You know, I watched and played the James O'Keefe piece where they clearly gaslit his investigation into the ballot harvesting, getting rid of these things. They absolutely did. And he's saying they're saying up is down. And I'm like, you know, I can just go back to that interview with that Esquire guy I just did, where now for 14 years, Hearst Publications and everybody else in the mainstream has gaslit us on what happened in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. There isn't an 8-mile debris field. There weren't debris in New Baltimore. It was a bad Google search where they went to Google Maps and it said 8 miles. I mean, literally, and there will be no fact check for them. So this is not a new thing. It wasn't new to 9/11. They gaslit us on Oklahoma City when you can clearly see that they had bomb trucks going in, getting explosives out. The governor, Frank Keating went on television and talked about those bombs being taken out. They gaslit us on the 1993 World Trade Center bombing where the FBI informant Ahmad Salam cooked the fucking bomb and then recorded his FBI handlers. So none of this is new. But now it's in super mode where they don't give you an explanation. They censor actual court hearings inside of our government. People like Louis Gohmert, people like Rand Paul, love him or hate him. They delete tweets by the president, by Tony Atlas, people within the government. What do we do, Ryan? Are you ready to go to the headquarters? Because I'm ready to go there with you. We need to organize not just everybody who's been purged, but anybody who's made a career on YouTube that has a goddamn brain in their head and doesn't understand yet that eventually they will come for you for some viewpoint down the line. Whether it's 5 months from now or 5 fucking years from now. I don't care what kind of Pop-Tart podcast you have and you think you're safe. I don't care if you have a gaming channel. This is it. This is the purge. So how do we organize that? And can it be effective when we have these like shows where we're going to sue the DOJ?
Right. I'm glad you said that because that's kind of what it's, I mean, who knows for sure, but it definitely says that to me. This is like this faux back and forth where they're trying, you know, the point is we've heard this before. We've heard that exact idea before about suing or investigating them for monopoly, you know, antitrust and blah, blah, blah. I would love to see something happen, but the problem is that ends up amounting to more government involvement, which is the opposite of what we should want. So I agree. I think it's kind of a show to make you think that something's happening so we don't have to do it ourselves, right? Like most of the things they do. But to your question, I mean, I honestly think the first thing that people need to do is and we've been saying this forever. And I made this point on Steve's show yesterday is that now that I'm on the other side of this, you know, I'm no longer on YouTube. I'm still making the same argument. People right now, like yourselves, should do everything they can to keep getting their content in front of the people on YouTube. That's paramount. But we shouldn't be focusing on YouTube, right? You do right, what you're doing is exactly the point. Go on Rockfin, go on other places, go everywhere else you can, but still get that content out there so they can see it. But everybody else needs to start finding other places to go if you care actually about free speech or truth. I mean, it's becoming the mainstream media on YouTube. So just stop using it. Go to other locations. They've got chats and everything else you would like to use. But I know that's going to be very difficult. But in regard to the action phase of what we can do, I mean, this is something I'm asking myself right now, like that I'm going to be deciding and thinking about today. Do I want to start, you know, I mean, I already saw other people trying to start like petitions to get me back on YouTube, but do I want to be back on YouTube? You know, and that's what I'm trying to decide. It's like, I could care less right now. If I just move forward, I'm not concerned. I'm not going, oh, I wish I could be on YouTube, but I know that that's a good way to reach those people. So I think people out there should start these things if they want in regard to getting people like myself back on there. But in regard to actually doing things to them, Steve said the same thing. We should start going out and protesting in front of the damn building. But what we need to keep doing is speaking out. Individuals like us or people that follow us. Go, you know, and don't just go to Twitter because that's what they want. They want you to go dump your emotions on Twitter and then feel like you're done, right? Go just make sure this continues. Start a movement. Go out and march through the streets, make flyers, but also go on Twitter, go on Facebook, go to other places. But we can't just let this die. And I want to really reiterate that this is not about me. I honestly think the censorship of The Last American Vagabond is probably the least important story happening right now. But we need to see the bigger picture of all of this. And this has just really motivated myself to just kind of kick this into gear. Vanessa Beeley, I was just talking to, said the same thing, where when her whole attack from the BBC, which I argue clearly backfired for them, like I'm wondering whether they're even going to come out with their hit piece because of how thoroughly they've already been debunked. But it inspired her to stand up and fight all the harder. And that should be the takeaway from this.
Yes, and we covered that Bealey story, and we are anxiously awaiting to see what the BBC is going to do with that. But just the fact that they put that much money, that much effort into discrediting a journalist who not only goes against the grain, reports the fucking truth. Right. Reports the uncomfortable, dirty, seedy, greasy truth that we're all entitled to know, so we know how reality works, and we don't let motherfuckers like Karl Rove create it and have us judiciously study it as they create new and better realities for a predator class. I'm not on board with that, period, amen. I'm going to fight it to the death, until they sew my goddamn mouth shut and cut off my goddamn hands. I'm going to find a way to make the media that they don't want you to see, because it's the truth, it's the truth, it's the truth, and these people at the top are not the arbiters of it, Ryan. So, as we see right now, right, not only doctors being censored, but now that I have you here, I have to kind of ask you, it looks like the mainstream media is trying to run with the same playbook they did in 2016 in discrediting the 2016 DNC leaks, right, with this new Hunter Biden stuff. Now, I had Robbie Martin on from Media Roots where we did a whole piece on it. We think there's a possibility of this thing being rife with disinformation and some of the more salacious angles to discredit the Burisma and China entanglements, the, outright showing of corruption, the outright showing of nepotism, and how, you basically bring your family into this global corruption system of doing favors and crony capitalism, not true global capitalism, but that's what we have. What are your thoughts on these revelations, the media trying to keep a cap on it? We now have the director of national intelligence coming straight out and saying this Russian narrative they're trying to push is bullshit, where we didn't see that last time. Thoughts on the entire thing?
Well, I mean, if anyone can't see that there's an obvious, just unbelievable amount of corruption going on with Hunter Biden, with Joe Biden, then you're a partisan hack and you're not paying attention, right? You choose to not see what Biden is because you want to support him. But the argument should be made, and I made this from the beginning of this Biden discussion, that you could probably make the same argument for pretty much everybody back there, right? I mean, Trump's family, there's already been discussions of things like similar kind of deals and things happening behind the scenes with his own family already in this administration. The point is that this is just how these people operate. And the problem is that no one side doesn't want to see it about the other, right? They don't want to recognize that Biden is the problem, only Trump's the problem, or vice versa, And so the point with this, where we're at now in regard to the distraction aspect, is I don't think for 1 second that Biden or any other person is going to be held accountable. It's just another story, just like you're saying, in regard to Russiagate, meant to to make us stop paying attention to what's really going on. I feel like the election itself is a distraction from what's really going on, but people can't wrap their minds around that today. But all this stuff is just meant to keep you distracted. I mean, look, what happened to Lock Her Up? What happened to the people that the gentleman from Boston that came in front of Congress and just laid out the Clinton Foundation piggy bank reality, and nothing ever happened there, right? Why was Pompeo, people leaking out or giving out Clinton emails a couple of weeks ago? What happened with that? Like, this is just all it's just all noise. Why don't they arrest these people if they're actually criminals? And people argue, there's due process and blah, blah, blah. Well, yeah, there should be, but that's not what's happening right now. And so if we can't see that that's a distraction to some degree, I'm just overwhelmed with how willfully ignorant we're being right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But that's just where we've been for a long time.
Yeah, I see what you're saying on that. I just find it so damn alarming that, you have the media coming out. First of all, they're not verified. They're not valid. They're not real. If there's anything about this story that is real, it's the emails, right?
Right. I would agree completely with that.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm very cautious because people were sending me, obviously, the Chinese dissident video even before the scandal broke. But, hey, I don't speak Mandarin, so I don't know what a subtitle means. I don't know how to fact check that. I'm always very, very cautious. And then you look at the ties this guy has and the fact that he's talking about what? Torture, rape videos, children, etc. Maybe that exists. That's definitely could be part of it. But just those rumors being embedded in the story before we really know the length of the corruption and the emails kind of gives it that, Pizzagate feel, where instead of focusing on John Podesta and Tony Podesta and their corruption, and yes, the Lozado emails and the children coming in there as entertainment, etc., you focus in on a pizza place, right? So it just has so many rings to that. And, hey, my audience, some of them, they've given me shit about it, but obviously I'm voting Trump. I mean, when you have a guy, Joe Biden, running on mandatory masks, his, radio ad, his talk radio as if and when we're ready to go back to work. If, motherfucker? Why is that even part of an actual ad? You're telling America if you're supposed to be there for 4 years, Joe. I don't even know how you put that in there with a straight face. But if, think about that. That's where we've gone. And, the media has somehow spun that this guy is more popular than the other guy who's got thousands of people out on runways everywhere, lawn signs everywhere. And let's be honest, if this wasn't going on, Joe Biden wouldn't have 500 people at a rally. They'd be bussing them in. Reality is so abstract at this point, right? It's what you want to believe almost. And maybe I'm guilty of that as well. I think it's hard for those that have never been outside of that left-right paradigm. It's even harder for them to get out now because the difference between Republican and Democrat, although we know it's not that pronounced, seems extremely pronounced right now.
Well, the noting on the voting aspect, I think my stance on voting in general, Jason. I think that the problem, I should always try to state in the beginning that in a real representative society, voting is important, if not paramount. But we don't have that right now. And I think that's what the problem is that we feel that we still have the ability to vote and change things despite literally every single reason we need in front of us to see that it's not there. Just, a Princeton study that can literally show you statistically that your vote means nothing, that you have a near zero statistically insignificant effect on policy. That's direct quote from Princeton. Right? Why do we not see that our votes aren't actually changing anything? That's the first point. But in regard to, look, I've said this before, if I, gun to my head, there's no third option. There's no not voting option. If I had to pick between the two, I would pick Trump because I think he's clumsy with his policy and very obvious about what he's doing. And we can see he's ripped the mask off, right? He's not pretending he's doing something humanitarian. He's coming out and saying, we're fucking taking it. We're stealing it. And it's like, okay, well, good. That's disgusting and horrible, but at least we can see it on its face, and that's not what makes people happy when they're voting for Trump, but the idea is that would be the case. But I am adamant about the fact that I'm not going to vote for Biden. I'm not going to vote for Trump. Both of them, it's words. Biden may say, I'm going to do this for sure. Trump will say, I'm not going to make it happen. But what ends up happening is what matters. And if Trump is ultimately, look at everything that's happened before. Right. And by the way, I'm not saying one is better than the other in regard to policy. I think they're both alarmingly just scary for me right now. But Biden is saying he's going to mandate masks, saying he's going to do this, which is ridiculous. Trump is arguing that it will kind of taking a middle ground, saying I'm probably not going to do that. Even with vaccines, he goes, I don't think I'll do that. It's like, cool. That makes me feel good. But what he's done in his policy so far is shown to be like, oh, we're going to leave Syria. Yay. He said that twice, by the way. And then it's something ends up happening. And then they go, well, he said he was going to, but this is why. When we take these discussions, we don't say this is why he'll do it. We just said, look, he won't leave Syria. Something will happen. They'll make an excuse and they won't happen. That happened twice. So this is the same thing I'm talking about now. When he says we won't mandate vaccines, I actually believe him. But that's because they already know that they're going to use societal and financial exclusion to force you into taking these things. They already have this thing locked in with ID 2020. They already got the airline lobby saying they're going to require vaccine cards. Operation Warp Speed has it listed that you're going to have vaccine cards and documentation. That seems normal to some degree. But when we already have other businesses saying they're going to use those cards to let you in or not, it's all right in front of us. Right. So that's mandatory. However you slice it. If you can't go to the store, get on an airplane, go watch a movie without showing your identification, that's what this is.
Absolutely. And if you don't think that those at the top either won't be, buying the better vaccines, the ones that don't have all the adjuncts or the preservatives or, not getting them at all and just getting them to put a
fake syringe. Have you seen that? That the fake syringe thing that they have, this is real. I've looked this up and they're like legit. They're made for movies and different things, I think, but it's straight up like, it looks exactly like a hypodermic needle, but the needle, pushes in.
Yeah.
And we've already seen I forget what official that was, where they did the fake shot and they claimed it was because, oh, well, we already did it beforehand and we wanted a shot for the news. That's what they claimed when they
Isn't
got
that
caught.
lovely?
You can see the cap on still.
Yeah, painting reality. Again, painting reality in front of your face, but we're bad for pointing that out. Listen, this is all going to be selective enforcement, just like we're seeing in YouTube, right? We live in a selective enforcement society already. John Brennan is above the law. Clapper is above the law. Right. The Clintons are above the law. Don't you understand that? And they're middlemen. They're capos at best. Cuomo is a middleman. That's all. He's actually just an arbiter of a predator class agenda. And you and I discussed this all the way back in March. You know, we said no matter what happens with the disease, with the virus, the response is always going to be worse. We've seen the consolidation of power we talked about. That's 100%. And now we're starting to see the implementation of what? An automation nation based in a UBI society, saying that these jobs aren't coming back. 2 large states being gutted, California and New York. The exodus is real. I left myself right in front of our eyes, giving it to billionaires, and zero accountability for these people. Really, the only pushback in New York City are the ultra-Orthodox Brooklyn Jews that are saying F you, Cuomo. Everybody else is pretty much laid down or left.
And it's odd the way that the difference in the way that they dealt with them as well. That needs to be pointed out. Like the way that they lighting fires in the middle of the streets and then just, but if it was a different group, there would have been, it's weird, right? I mean, it's odd that the different perceptions they have. I mean, obviously you could argue it's because they felt it was a political, hornet's nest for them to do so, but that shows you the point. Yeah. Right?
Cuomo's open about that. He says this is a group that has a lot of political power. I mean, and that's not even on.
Well, that's anti-Semitic, Jason. You can't say that. You can't say that.
Well, again, he got, and that's not even on the recorded phone calls that he had with the Jewish leaders that they put out there that weren't part of either his press conferences or audio conferences. If had any other person said that wasn't America's governor, that didn't have a bestseller out during this crisis on how great he handled it. I mean, total imagination land.
Wow.
I mean, it's just, you talk about painting reality and it's all right in front of you. And the media totally ignored all of those phone calls that got released where he said that this wasn't a scientific-based policy, it was a fear-based policy. All that was right in front of our faces again. And like you said, it is selective enforcement, right? He's never spoken out against the protests over in Buffalo, Rochester, the bridges, when it comes to Black Lives Matter, period. Those are never part of the super spreader events, that they're never able to actually scientifically say spread anything, right? Because you look at the Chainsmokers concert there wasn't an uptick. You look at all these protests, there wasn't an uptick. But my college town, when you didn't test any of the kids from Long Island and New York City, the 2 greatest hotspots possibly in the country, they just said that they spread it via parties after you tested them after the fact. Right. I smelled horse shit from the beginning. And then what? Oh, we'll just pass a law. You can't have more than 10 people in your house and you're not wearing a mask. And now we can fine you each $1,000 in a private home in an upstate New York town. I mean,
and the CDC has been noting week after week, very subtly, right? Of course, they don't want to push this out, but on their mortality statistics every single week it's been at least over a month now, consistently going down across the board. Cases, deaths, everything, all of it has been going down, staying the same or going down for weeks. Of course, all they do is they focus on one county. Oh, spike in cases. Oh, and they report it, and it's like, well, how would you not report the obvious statistical decline in everything that's happening? You cannot argue we're in a pandemic when you're literally seeing every metric go down week after week. I mean, what the hell is going on? How are we even in a point where they can make that argument and censor us for pointing out the obvious fallacy? Yeah. It's incredible.
And the fact that the therapeutics that we talked about again in March existed. We talked about steroids. Yeah. We talked about vitamin C. We talked about D. We dare not talk about HCQ other than the fact that the president had recommended it. But now all of those and other steroids like dextromethasone and other things like remdesivir are out there. We all know they're out there. And yet we're still in this very odd situation where if you want to go outside of your house without a mask or you want to go to a sporting event, which I did this weekend twice, eat it. I did it. I mean, you're part of the problem. You want to kill fucking grandma. And that's not the case. And again, to imagine that my community that's had this outbreak and that the kids were not around elderly people and that they were not around bartenders that were working in hospitals and nursing homes would be imagination land again. But again, 2020 is the land of imagination, and an evil imagination at that. Ryan, I know we're coming up on our time here. How can people support you today? Where can they go to find the latest from The Last American Vagabond? Because, it's not just you. You have brought in some of the best independent journalists, especially during this time period, to expose Operation Warp Speed and so much more. Whitney Webb, Derek Brose, others. How can people support you? Where can they find your work? What's going on?
The best possible thing everybody can do, and I argue the same thing for Jason and anybody else, is go to our websites. Go directly to our websites, subscribe, www.thelast.americanvagabond.com. And you can see right there the subscribe tab on the far right. You should also go there and subscribe to anything else that's in there. Primarily the podcast. Right, the podcast is what's most important, or other than the website, because that's a direct feed to the audio versions of my show. So I have a personal relationship with Blueberry, and they are fans of my show. So I don't think anything's going to happen there. But so those are the two first things you should do. Other than that, I think everybody knows all the listings out there. But if they don't, the alternative platforms we use. Rockfin is one that I'm also a part of. 3Speak, Brighteon, DLive, pretty much all of them. I mean, VK, I still use Periscope and Facebook and all these things. We're still broadcasting. So the show's not going to change. I'm going to keep doing this. If you want to reach me, you can contact me at ryan@thelast.americanvagabond.com. And if you want to email me, I can give you my office line so you can reach out if you have anything important. Because I don't know we didn't even mention that weirdly when this happened, I easily more than half the day when I first got censored, they locked me out of my Twitter account. We all see this happen every time. And it seems that I'm back in now. Who knows what's going to happen tomorrow? So email me to be sure, because I wasn't getting the DMs. But the coordination is just so obvious. It's clear that they coordinated. They don't want you to be able to jump on Twitter and be like, hey, this is what's going on. I would like to shout out too that I have an interview on the 24th with Dr. Mikovits. So that'll be an important interview to discuss some things. I don't think anyone's even really talked to her about what's recently been going on. She's been kind of dark for a while. So on the 24th, I'll be talking to her, but it won't be on YouTube because they won't allow it. So make sure you keep track because that'll be coming out for sure.
And for those that don't know, he's obviously referring to Dr. Judy Mikovits, who was part of the Plandemic documentary and totally and completely not only demonized in the media, but all over the internet. Her Wikipedia page is basically just a hit piece and a smear job. And it's so odd that you have to now go to direct websites. In fact, the really crazy thing is, when I went to find out whether it was lastamericanvagabond.net or whatever and Googled it, your website doesn't even come up on the front page. It's all the other things. It's Twitter, it's BitChute. They don't even want people to directly go to your website. And that's why, to me, this whole Google sued by the DOJ and antitrust case is kind of a joke. Just like them trying to bring in Zuckerberg and Dorsey for the Hunter Biden stuff is kind of a joke.
I like to make a note on that as well, actually. We have to remember, James Corbett has done amazing work in regard to Standard Oil, right? How big oil conquered the world. I mean, I've interviewed him about that whole series. I think you have as well. That series was fantastic. And he makes a really excellent point about what they did then was create this illusion for the public that what we needed to do was break up Standard Oil because they're too powerful. But that's what they wanted to happen. That was the plan. And when they broke it up was when he cemented himself as the richest person on the planet, right? That's what that gave him. It gave him all the power. So when we're looking at something like this, especially when we know that DOJ and our government, not just Trump, not just Obama, but our government is clearly in bed with these entities. They're clearly, Google is literally part of Operation Warp Speed. This doesn't make any sense that we're talking about this. Google is censoring on YouTube discussions about their vaccine. And we're going to believe that the DOJ is going to go after them for doing that. Maybe in other cases, what they want you to think is about conservatives. But this, even if they ultimately end up doing it and breaking it up or whatever they say they're going to do, is that really what they don't want? Mm-hmm. We should be asking that question, right? This is how they do it. Problem, reaction, solution. We all know this. So we just got to start realizing that left or right? It's all your government and they're all trying to control you.
That's 100%. Ryan, thank you so much for coming on. If you need anything from me, you let me know. And again, I really do believe that we have to find a way to get a multitude of us, our followers, our subscribers in front of these tech, giants in their element and demand some kind of resolution, because we're not going to get it from the government. We know we're not going to do that. And I'm kind of scared that they're already framing it up in this left-right paradigm. As you just saw, the big story yesterday was that, Antifa types in a counter-protest went after Trump types who were protesting internet censorship in front of these offices. And I'm telling you guys, this isn't a MAGA thing. It's not a right-left thing. It's not a conservative-liberal thing. It's a free speech thing. It's been going on for way, way too long. And we're not at the tipping point. We're coastering down in an 18-wheeler towards fucking oblivion unless we do something. Ryan, thank you again, brother.
Thanks for having me on, man.
You got it, bro.